I feel like the red lip is a little much for 11 a.m. but now we're committed. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing my January wrap up. I feel like this was a really good reading month for me. I read a few thrillers. I was in such a thriller mood. Some new romances, and I also reread a lot of romances. I think because I filmed my end of the year videos, so I just like had all my favorites from last year in my head and I wanted to do some rereads. I think I read 8 books in total, which for me is pretty good. I usually only read like 5 or 6. And also my Kindle and I were like this. She was my BFF this month. I don't think I have a single physical copy of any book I read. Actually, I have one, but I don't feel like getting up to go get it. So the first book I read this year was The Right Move by Liz Tom Ford. This is the 3rd book in a series of interconnected standalones, and the second one was one of my favorite books of last year, so I wanted to give this one a shot. This follows Ryan and Indy, and Ryan is in the NBA. He's like a really famous basketball player, and Indy is a flight attendant, and she's best friends with Ryan's twin sister, and she just went through a really bad breakup, so she has nowhere to live. So the sister suggests that she move in with Ryan, and then she also agrees to fake date him because his coach doesn't think he has a good work-life balance. So they're roommates living together and they're fake dating. I enjoyed this. I really liked both characters and I liked their relationship. I feel like everybody says this, but Ryan Shea really is the acts of service king. Like, he is so sweet to her and is always just doing things for her and making her life easier. It's so cute. But I will say, I feel like her books are just a little too long. When I was reading, there was an entire conflict and resolution which I thought was the 3rd act breakup, and then I was only 80% through the book. And then in terms of the actual 3rd act breakup, I just wasn't a huge fan of it. It made sense in context with the story, but it just wasn't really my thing, and I also feel like it got dragged out. And one of my pet peeves is when the conflict in a romance book gets dragged out for like a week, when in reality it would have been resolved in an hour, and I feel like that was the case with this. And it was also a miscommunication trope, which I struggle with, but I did enjoy it, so I gave it 3 stars. Then I read None of This Is True. This is what set off my thriller hyperfixation. This is about 2 women who meet and find out that they have the same exact birthday, day, hospital, everything. I don't know if this is just me. I can literally never remember people's names after I finish a book. I literally always have to look it up. Alex, right. Alex is a successful podcast host and Josie is just like a normal person. They're sort of opposites. Alex is very successful, her husband has money, she has like the white picket fence, and Josie's sort of unhappy with her life. She has like a part-time job and some trouble with her kids, and basically Josie suggests that Alex interview her for a podcast, and the premise is Josie is going to start over and take back her life almost. But to do that, she also has to get into her backstory, and I don't want to get too much into it because I feel like thrillers are better when you go in with minimal knowledge. But I loved this. I was just so immersed in it immediately. I could not stop thinking about it even when I wasn't reading it, and I listened to the audiobook, and the audiobook for this was so good. Definitely one of my favorite audiobooks now that I've ever listened to. Because it's podcast format, it just lends itself so well to an audiobook, and there's also mixed media elements in between chapters. There's like fake Netflix documentary clips, and it was just so engaging and good. I will say though, I did see like some of the end coming. Some of it was a surprise, but some of it I guessed pretty early on. So I was gonna give this 5 stars. I am so stingy with my 5 stars, and this year I told myself I was gonna try and be better, and I just can't do it. So I gave this 4.5 stars. I did really like it, but I think it was just missing like a little bit to make it a 5 star. And I read Out on a Limb, which I just love when really hyped up books actually live up to the hype and they're not disappointing. This follows Bo and Win, and they have a one-night stand on Halloween, and Win ends up getting pregnant. So stay with me. It is accidental pregnancy trope, which, trust me, normally I hate. Like, before this I was the #1 accidental pregnancy trope hater, but this book is just so much more than that. Please do not let that deter you from picking up this book because it is just so good. And I also feel like knowing that it's accidental pregnancy trope going in, and that's like the crux of the story, helped, because I don't like when I'm reading a romance and then the accidental pregnancy trope just like comes out of nowhere and is like not necessary. But this book, I just adored them. Like, I literally loved them so much. They're also both disabled, so it was really kind of refreshing to read a book like that. I don't think I've really read any romances with like heavy disability rep. She has an underdeveloped hand and he had his leg amputated, and so just them like being so accepting of each other and understanding, and they just had great chemistry, and I loved them individually, and I loved their romance, and I just adored them. Like, I loved them so much, and they just had such a healthy relationship, which is so refreshing because you don't always get that. And something I love and really appreciate in romance books is when the author can balance more serious topics and backstories with a really good romance and not make it like exploitative and super tragic. I really appreciate that. Like, they're dealing with very serious things, but it's still a happy book, if that makes sense. Speaking of happy books, then I reread Happy Place. If you watched my end of the year tag video where I said I was gonna reread less books this year, no you didn't. I have been like jonesing to reread this, honestly, since I read it the first time when it came out, because I did love this book. Like, don't get me wrong, the first time I read it I did really enjoy it. However, it was definitely my least favorite Emily Henry, which, like, even my least favorite Emily Henry I like more than a lot of other books, but I just wanted to reread it again to see if maybe I would like it more, and I did. This follows Harriet and Wynne, who are college sweethearts, and they recently broke off their engagement, but they didn't tell any of their friends. And now they're at their annual summer trip at this beach cottage in Maine, and they find out it's going to be their last summer doing this vacation. So basically they decided to just fake date because they don't want to ruin the week for all their friends. And it's dual timeline. You get flashbacks of their relationship and then current time. And the reason I think I wasn't super obsessed with this the first time I read it is because it is one big miscommunication trope. Like, the whole thing is a huge miscommunication, which, like I said before, not always my favorite. And I think I was just so frustrated reading it the first time. So I was like, can you guys just like literally speak to each other? You've been dating for 10 years. Like, just have a conversation, please. I'm literally begging you. But then reading it the second time and knowing what I was getting into and knowing that that's what it's about and I have to just like put it aside, it really didn't bother me as much. And even like with that aside, I just love the main character in this, Harriet, so much. There's a lot of discussions about your 20s and feeling lost and your careers and friendships changing and you're getting older, and I'm 26, okay? So that stuff is really relevant to my life, and I just love that aspect of the story so much. And I love Harriet. I feel like I can relate to her in a lot of ways, and just some of the quotes in this book, I swear Emily Henry reads my diary. She like goes into my brain and puts it on the page. I don't know how she does it. And I was just really glad I reread this. 5 stars. Then I continued on the thriller trend and I read Never Lie by Frida McFadden. This was my first Frida McFadden book. I feel like she's been so popular the last few years, but I'm just very late to this train. This one is about a couple who is house hunting, and they drive out to this secluded house that they want to tour and end up getting snowed in for the weekend, and they discover that the house was owned by this famous psychologist who went missing a few years prior. And while the main character is exploring the house, she comes across thousands of tapes because the psychologist had taped all of her sessions. So she starts listening to them to try and figure out what happened to her. This was really entertaining and easy to read. I definitely got sucked in pretty much right away. And I also read it at the perfect time because I read it when it was snowing here. So it was very atmospheric. And it did have my heart racing a little bit. Like, I was getting a little nervous, which is good. That doesn't always happen when I read thrillers. But there were just some things about it, specifically the end, that I don't really know how I feel about. The one plot twist had me gooped. I was clutching my pearls, but there were just other things that I kind of was like, I don't know how I feel about them. Like, I don't know. So I gave this 3 stars. I would definitely recommend. I get why she's so popular, but it's just not an all-time favorite of mine. But then I also read The Housemaid by her. And this follows a woman who becomes a housemaid for this family in the Hamptons, I believe. And basically the mom of the family is like a little cuckoo. There's some weird stuff going on. She lives in the attic, and the attic only locks from the outside. There's just some weird stuff going on. And of course the husband is like this rich, handsome guy. So she's kind of picturing what her life could be like if she was the woman of the house. Again, I have conflicting feelings about this one. I thought the first third of the book was so annoying just because the mom is just so, I don't even know the right word, like it was just making me cringe, and like I felt so bad for the main character. And I think it's because I was a nanny for a while, not like this, but like I don't know, I just kept picturing myself in her shoes and like cringing and getting secondhand embarrassment. And I was just like, I almost cannot read this because it's literally like making me cringe out so bad. But then the second half of the book, it kind of pivots, and I liked that part a lot more. It was a lot more interesting interesting and engaging. But then again, it kind of had the same thing as Never Lie, where there's just certain things that happen at the end that I just don't know how I feel about, and just conflicting feelings. Like, some things I liked and some things I really didn't. So again, I gave this one a 3 stars. Again, like, I would recommend it. It was easy to read and entertaining, but it's just, there's like a specific thing that she seems to do that I just don't know if I like, and it holds me back from really loving these. Then I did another romance reread. I just can't help myself lately, and that is Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. This is a dual POV romance. I love a good dual POV between Vanessa and Adrian, and Vanessa is a travel YouTuber who has had to put her lifestyle on hold because she now has custody of her newborn niece, and Adrian is her next door neighbor slash landlord slash he's a lawyer. And one night the baby is crying at like 3 in the morning and he can't sleep, so he comes over and offers help to calm the baby down, and he's like, go take a shower, take care of yourself, I'll hold the baby for a few minutes. And from there they develop this friendship. It's a friends to lovers, and for their own reasons they both have sort of different backstories on why, but they basically both say that they don't want to be in a relationship, and so that's how they end up just friends. I first and foremost am just a sucker for the single parent trope. Like, it's gonna do it for me every single time, and I just love their dynamic and their friendship that they have. He really steps up, you know, he's not the stepdad, he's the dad that steps up. Like, he helps her out so much, and if you love a man who is down astronomically for the girl and will just do anything for her, you will love him. And not in like a I hate everyone in the world but you, touch her and die way, and just, he is a genuinely really nice guy, and is just caring and nurturing and wants to be there for her and cares about her and the baby a lot. You will love him. And Abby Jimenez is another author who just perfectly knows how to balance more serious topics with romance books. I feel like all of her books, or a lot of them anyway, the ones I've read, have some sort of like medical issue going on, either with the main character or a side character, or like characters or doctors or something. This one included, and she just kills it. Like, I'm giggling over the romance in one chapter and then I'm sobbing in the next, but in the best way. And I feel like out of all of Abby Jimenez's books, this one is the most underrated, so I would definitely recommend. Then the last book of the month was also another reread. This is why I have 800 books marked want to read on Goodreads. And I reread Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is a cowboy romance. It was my first cowboy romance when I read it like spring of last year, and it's a single dad nanny trope. Basically, he is a single dad and he needs someone to watch his son for the summer, but he's very protective, and so he's been interviewing all these people and just not liking any of them. So his sister-in-law is like, hey, you know, my best friend, she's free for the summer, why doesn't she come and do it? So she comes, and it becomes their live-in nanny, and it's very much like Grumpy Sunshine. He's a grump and she's like a Spitfire kind of character. And again, I love the single parent trope. I love forced proximity. I love a cowboy. This checks a lot of my boxes. I don't know, I just really like this book, you know? Like, sometimes you don't have very specific things necessarily that you love about it. Like, I just love this book. I think it's sweet, and I love the relationship between her and the son, and I love the setting. It's just fun, you know? It's just a fun book. This is also the second book in a series. I've read a few of the other ones, not all of them, and this one's definitely my favorite out of the Chestnut Springs series. And that was my last book of this month. Really good reading month. I promise next month I won't have as many rereads. If you want to follow me anywhere else, I'll have all my socials down below as always, and thank you so much for watching.